Hey guys, so apparently my first recording of this didn't work out so well, so I wanted to make sure that you guys could hear me this time. So I'm just recording this video again. So the first one that's on there, I'm going to take off and put this one on. So if you watched it already, and you heard it well enough to be able to take your notes, don't worry about watching this one again. But if you need it, here we go. So again, the learning target is that you can identify how and why empires developed and how they affected people's lives. So we are going to be talking about 6 different groups of people that are in Mesopotamia. And today we're going to be talking about the Akkadian Empire and Sargon, and then we're going to be talking about the Babylonian Empire and Hammurabi. So here we go. Okay. Akkadians long ago conquered Sumer, took control. So Sargon is the Great is a famous man from the city-state of Kish and Akkad. That was located in central Mesopotamia. We're going to be seeing a map in a second on that one. The Akkadians and the Sumerians shared a very similar culture. They had the same religious beliefs, kind of the same festivals and all of that stuff, but they had different ethnic origins and they spoke different languages. Oops. Before becoming ruler, Sargon was a servant to the king of Kish. He was one of those people that started off in the lower classes of people, and he kind of rose to the top. He became an official, which is in that first class of people, and pretty soon he got enough power behind him, that he overthrew the king. These are some remnants of what's left of some sculptures of Sargon from that time period. While Sargon gained power, civil wars and invasions made Sumer weak. So, remember back yesterday when you were listening to Sumer, the city-states were always fighting. They wanted control of resources. And those wars in between each other just made them weak. So by 2334 BC, Sargon came in, swept his armies through, and took control of everything. And when he did that, when he controlled all of that land, he created what's known as an empire. An empire is a group of different lands and people, but they're governed by one ruler. So all those city states, remember, they were all self-governing. They all had their own way of doing things. He came, took them all over, and then he became their one leader. Here's some pictures and some sculptures from that time. This is Sargon kind of looking over his empire. This is Sargon, what they kind of viewed Sargon as, is stepping on top of people. This is pretty much what Sumer his empire would have looked like at the time, the Akkadian Empire. There's Kish, and this whole brown section is all the land he conquered and took over. So all these little city-states in here, he now rules. The Akkadian Empire stretched from the Persian Gulf right here all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, which is right here, and he ruled it from Akkad, right here. The empire lasted 150 years. Sargon was really, really good at managing his land. He could manage projects and people. He allowed them to keep their rulers. So that's a big thing. So he kind of let the city-states alone and said, you guys can just keep doing things the way you normally do it. You can keep your kings, you can keep your laws, you can keep your traditions, you can keep everything. And the only thing that I'm asking for in return is to pay me a tribute. And a tribute is a tax that someone pays for protection. So basically, they give him money, and if they need his help, he can send his army in to help them out in that situation. They also had to promise that they would obey him in any command he would give. Now, the fact that he let people continue to do what they wanted to do helped keep peace and win people's loyalty. They were loyal to him because he kind of just left them alone. There again is another picture. And this would have been his armies coming in, taking over. So one of the big things he did was introduce a standard of weights and measures. So if you think about when you go to the store and you want to go buy like a pound of ham at the deli, if I go to any deli in any grocery store and ask for a pound of ham, it's going to be the same amount. Before Sargon introduced the standard of weights and measures, if you went to one person and wanted let's just say a pound, they had different ways of measuring things. But if you wanted a pound of grain and then you went to someone else and wanted a pound of grain, they would be different things. So with his standard of weights and measures, you knew that you were going to get the same amount of something no matter where you were, which is really important because you don't want somebody to cheat on you. He made Akkadian the official language of all the city states. So they were all united under one language, which is a big deal too. The fact that he introduced these weights and measures helped trade because people were more trusting and would definitely want to trade more if they knew that they weren't going to get cheated. He managed agriculture so well that 100 years went by without famine. That's a big deal. 100 years without any hunger. They had enough. They were good enough at farming that they could self-sustain. This is another picture of Sargon. These are some trade routes that existed during the time. These are down here some examples of things they traded. See if I can move my face out of the way so you can kind of see better. Maybe. There we go. Gold, silver. Sorry, my little black bar keeps popping up. Copper, alabaster. Those are all different minerals and stuff and metals. Shell and lapis. That's a mineral. So it's really super important that they traded those things with each other and they followed these trade routes. Akkad traded with suppliers of timber, and that's wood, metal, and other raw materials. Where they were located at, there was not a lot of those things. So in order to get those, to use them, they had to trade with people outside of the empire. His wars focused on gaining control of trade centers. If they had the centers of trade, they could make more wealth. He also protected natural resources. But the common problem in these times is that the lands would get too big to control. Just think back then, they didn't have like ways to send messages really quick with each other or get help if they needed to. And when you get too much land, then it kind of can just fall apart. This is a theme that we're going to continue talking about in pretty much every civilization. They start to gain a lot of power, a lot of land, and then all of a sudden everything just becomes too big to control and it falls apart. So after he died, his sons took control, but they just couldn't keep order. They didn't really like his sons that much. They didn't like his laws. They didn't like his expectations or their expectations. So the city states decided to rebel. The sons, of course, wanted to keep control of their land, so they put a lot of effort into trying to keep peace. Enemies also came down from the northeast and raided their empires. Some of the borders of their empire were unprotected from geography, so it was easier for them to get over. Famine returned, and that caused suffering. So they didn't have enough food. That caused problems. When you have problems that aren't getting fixed in an area, people get upset. So this is called unrest. Unrest grew, and by 2200 BC, the Akkadian Empire ended. They overthrew it. Just some examples and pictures of people getting upset and some more. All right, so I'm going to stop there for 1 second. Make sure I go here and talk about what should go on your slides. So here, who was Sargon? What did he do? He was the first person that kind of came in, took control, and united all the city-states into an empire. What could the lands in Akkad keep? The lands in Akkad could keep their rulers, their customs, their traditions. Pretty much they could just kind of run things as normal. What did Sargon introduce? Standards of weights and measures. What was the result of well-managed agriculture? No hunger for 100 years. Why did the empire fall apart? It got too big to control. Again, when that happens, they can't keep it all together and it starts to fall apart. People were upset, unrest grew, and the empire crumbled. And when Sargon's sons took over, they didn't like them. Again, the city-states rebelled, and enemies came in and raided the border. Okay, we're going to skip down to this slide right here for rulers. Sargon, what was he? What was he before he was king? He was a servant to the king. What was he good at? He was good at managing people and places. He was good at managing agriculture. What did he bring to Mesopotamia? He brought. Oops, hold on. Sorry. So, what did he bring to the Mesopotamia? He brought prosperity and helped trade. Prosperity just means he made everybody he made the nation wealthier, and he made everybody succeed. All right, going back, let me go to the right spot, which is pause this for a second. All right, here we go. So the Babylonian Empire. Wait for this to load for a second. The Babylonian Empire, again, the learning target is I can identify how and why empires developed and how they affected people's lives. So after Sargon's Akkadian Empire crumbled, a tribe called the Amorites invaded western Mesopotamia around 2000 BC. I'm trying to move my face out of the way. There we go. Come on. And their ruler, 1792 BC, was named Hammurabi. Hammurabi is a super important person that we're going to really focus on. This is what they thought he would look like. I'm kind of move this out of the way so you can see for your Funko Pop kind of what he looked like back then. And this would have been the capital, the head where he worked at, Babylon. Move this out of the way again. Assyria's here, Babylonia, Sumer. All of this was run by Babylon. Hammurabi made the kingdom larger and spread the Babylonian Empire across Mesopotamia and other parts of the Fertile Crescent. He spent his first 29 years as ruler making the empire better by building straighter streets. It's really hard to move this. Just keep sticking. There we go. By making straighter streets, stronger city walls, great temples, and better irrigation canals. So he just made the city-states, better among all of the architecture. Irrigation canals, better irrigation canals will help farming. He also spent his time building up networks of alliances or partnerships, which will work together and for trade, anything that you need help with. Here's some statues and some sculptures of Hammurabi. So Hammurabi is most well known, though, for his code of laws. His empire was full of places that had their own laws. So to unite the people, he went to all the city-states, found the best laws that he liked, and he added some new ones of his own and put them all together into a written code. Now, all the places had laws before, but the reason why Hammurabi is so special is because he actually took those laws and wrote them down. And the reason why that's important is because anybody can go look up the law and look up the punishment. They can't change it just because they wanted to. If something's not written down, then people can make laws up or forget laws as much as they want, and they can make up their own punishments. So like in our society today, we have our laws written down. So if you want to know what the law is, you can go look it up and you can see what the consequence of not following that law. It's the same in school. We have a code of conduct in a book, and then you can go to that book, you can read the code of conduct and find out if you broke this rule, what's the consequence. This is all stemming from Hammurabi. Hammurabi is the first person to do that. He marked a big step forward for civilizations and helped bring justice to everyday life. Trying to move my face, it just will not move. There we go. It's an important primary source. So again, I know we didn't really talk about primary and secondary sources because we skipped unit 1, but primary sources are things that are recorded at the time. We talked about 9/11, so you should know that 9/11 had a lot of videos that showed the events happening and people that talked about the events happening, and there's written accounts of people that went through that. Those are primary sources. If I personally here am just telling you about what I saw, like what I saw on TV, I'm a secondary source. I didn't live through it. I didn't experience it. Even though I was alive at the time, I watched it all through a TV. So I saw it. I didn't experience it. But if someone who was at 9/11 wrote about it, that's a primary source. This is a primary source, and it helps historians learn about life in Babylonia at the time. Now, Hammurabi's laws are very, very strict. Most of them end in death. Some of them end in selling uh, you know, selling your son or daughter or wife into slavery for 3 years if you don't pay a debt. They can cut out your hand, cut out your eye. Those are all punishments for breaking Hammurabi's laws. So as you can tell, most people were too scared to break Hammurabi's laws. That is Hammurabi's written code right there. It wasn't written on paper. They didn't have paper at the time, but it was carved into this big, giant piece of stone. Here is one of his laws, and a popular saying even today is called an eye for an eye. So you do something bad should be done back to you. It comes from Hammurabi. If a man destroy the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. And that was actually like a law. If you hurt someone's eye, they will cut out your eye. That's how crazy their laws were. But we actually say that, an eye for an eye, and that came straight from Hammurabi. The code was applied based on a person's social class. So if you were a more wealthier person, for example, you might have to pay a lot more money than if you were a slave and you don't have money. However, punishments were usually harsher in terms of, hurt and death if you were in a lower class. They also had laws about farming and the buying and selling of goods. Uh, the big deal about Hammurabi's laws is that his code influenced later legal systems. That means that the legal system in Greece and Rome, that we're going to talk about later, that ours is based on, the foundation, the thing that everything is built on, starts with Hammurabi. So our laws we have today, the basis, the great great grandfather of our legal system is Hammurabi. He's the one that started all of this. Also, just like us today, people in Mesopotamia under Hammurabi were innocent until proven guilty. That means they had to take their case up. They had to have it, people vote on whether or not that they actually did break that law. And if it found out they were guilty, they were found guilty, then they would get punished. But if they were found innocent, they weren't. Here are some of his laws, just a few. So these are a primary source. If a man be in debt and is unable to pay his creditors, he shall sell his wife, son, or daughter, or bind them over to service. They shall be enslaved. So for 3 years, they shall work in the house of their purchaser or master. In the 4th year, they shall be given their freedom. They probably won't want to go back to their husband or dad, but they get to get their freedom after 3 years. After Hammurabi's death in 1750 BC, the Babylonian Empire declined. It disappeared about 150 years later. His achievements made Babylon the political, cultural, and religious center for hundreds of years. That means Babylon was the place to go in Mesopotamia, and it was because of Hammurabi. All right, going back to our notebook. So on slide 14 is Babylon. Who set up the capital of Babylon? Hammurabi. Who was Hammurabi and what did he do? He was the ruler of the Babylonian Empire, and he created a code of laws. What was his code and what was it based on? His code was written laws, and it was based on the laws that were in all the other city-states. Why is Hammurabi's code important? It's a primary source that helps us learn about Babylon, and it sets up our legal system. How was the city-states improved? Straighter streets, better irrigation, stronger walls. What happened after Hammurabi's death? The empire again crumbled. Okay, going back to rulers of Hammurabi. What did he create? Again, written code of laws. Most important. How did he make Babylon the largest city? He made it the cultural center. He made it the place that everybody wanted to go. It was the cultural center of Mesopotamia. And that's it. So hopefully you guys can go and do your Funko Pop now, which is right here. Again, remember, there's a video that goes over how to do it. There's directions with the website here or here. All of this, if you just want to watch the video, it will cover all of this stuff too. To screenshot it, You hit the buttons, control, and then the one that looks like double boxes or triple boxes. The pictures on Google Classroom will show you how to screenshot. Then you double click and you crop it down to just the picture after you insert image, upload from computer after you screenshot it. All right, have a great rest of your day. I hope this video is better than the last one and you have a good weekend.